Hello, my name's Richard. I'm the pastor at the King's Church in Addlestone in Surrey. And at the moment we're looking at this theme of being a church. Just simply, what is it to be a church? Looking at the teachings of Jesus and how we apply them to ourselves so that we can be a church. And today I'm going to look at the theme of hospitality within that. To be a church is to be a people who are hospitable. But we're looking at hospitality Jesus style. Meaning it's less about getting out the best cutlery and sort of making everything nice and fancy to effectively show off the people as they come to our place. And more about washing people's dirty, smelly feet. Okay, let me explain that. You see, there's a story in the scriptures in John chapter 13 where Jesus is at the Passover meal. And he knew that this was going to be his last Passover meal with his disciples. And as the meal is being served, just as it's being served, Jesus gets up. You know how frustrating that is when you've just made a meal, you've prepared it, and then you serve it, everyone's around the table, and just as it hits the table, someone jumps up and goes, "Oh, I've just got to go," and then they disappear off, and you're like, "Ugh." Well, that's what Jesus is doing. He gets up, and what he does is he takes off his outer clothes. You can imagine everybody's kind of like, "What is going on? What's he doing? We're just about to eat." Takes off his outer clothes, puts a towel around his waist, gets a bowl of water, and starts to wash the disciples' feet. Now, that may seem bizarre and strange to us in our modern world because we don't have any frame of reference for that in our lives. But even in the ancient world, even in that time, even in that place, this would have been strange and bizarre to the disciples too. Not necessarily for the same reasons as it would be for us, but for them, Jesus was the rabbi. He was the master. He was the leader. He was like the head of the table. And yet in doing what he's doing, washing people's feet, he's doing the job and taking on the role of a servant. Now, this story, as with many of the stories in John's Gospel, is rich in meaning and in significance. And it's like a masterpiece of artwork where there's just so much going on in the picture. And we're just going to look at maybe some of those aspects. But essentially what Jesus is doing is he's acting out a living parable. And what he's doing is the explanation for that parable is he's explaining what's going to happen to him on the cross. Jesus knew his time was close to be betrayed and delivered to death on the cross. And so rather than tell everybody, well, this is what's going to happen and this is what it means and this is what the point of it is and the purpose of it is, rather than tell people that, he acts out its meaning in the form of a living parable. And this living parable is how we can understand what his work on the cross was about. Because as he washes people's feet, he welcomes them into the house. And so we understand that the cross is a form of washing or forgiveness and a form of welcome or reconciliation. See, Jesus offered something which the host of the meal should have offered. He performed this act of foot washing, which would have been something that the host of the meal should have offered, and a servant who belonged to the host of the meal should have performed this duty. But instead, Jesus takes on this role. He's the one who takes on the role of a servant, and he washes the dirt off people's feet, the disciples' feet, his own disciples. And it is a statement that says, "I have made you clean, and I have made you acceptable." In doing this, he's effectively saying, "I am your host. You are welcome here with me. You are accepted. You are included. You are part of this. You belong here." Washing and welcome, the work of the cross. Now consider what that means. Consider this living parable. Imagine yourself as the recipient of it. You're at that meal and you have Jesus come to you just as the meal is served and he starts to wash your feet. How do you think you would have felt? I mean, this is Jesus, the rabbi, and he is doing this. He is serving you by washing your feet. How would you feel? Well, We know from Peter's in this story, one of Jesus' closest disciples. He was not comfortable with this at all. You know, he just thought, this is all wrong. This is upside down. It's the wrong way round. He couldn't really get his head around it to start with. Because the thing is, pure love, pure grace, unabandoned welcome, it's difficult to accept. So take a moment to receive this. Take a moment, put yourself in that scenario, in that situation, put yourself in that living parable and receive the love, the grace, the washing, the welcome of Jesus. Because this is a parable of what is going to happen on the cross, and the cross is so central to who we are as Jesus' people. So, the call of as followers of Christ who take up the cross and go after him is to be similar living parables. Jesus says, you now have seen what I've done, you do the same. You're to do likewise. And if you do that, there'll be a blessing on you. So he's basically saying to us, our lives are to be similar living parables. Now, I don't think that means that we have to carry a bowl of warm water and a towel around with us wherever we go so that we can wash people's feet at any given opportunity. I don't think that's what that means. I don't think we're supposed to copy Jesus' actions religiously, the practice of foot washing, as a regular part of our church service. You are probably glad to know. But what I think it does mean is that we take Jesus' living parable to inspire our own living parables that tell of the washing and of the welcome of the cross. To live lives of Jesus-like hospitality. Christian hospitality, you see, is actually rooted in the work of the cross. It is forgiveness. It is welcome. It is inclusion. It is acceptance. It's embrace. It's sins washed away. It's forgiveness, reconciliation to God and to one another, welcomed into the house, the home of the Father. It is Jesus preparing a place for us, and our hospitality in response is preparing a place for people in our own lives. Preparing a place for people in our own lives. Now that takes intention, that takes sacrifice on our part. We welcome one another and we welcome strangers. We will need to welcome people, those who we find who are easy to welcome, because some people are just easy to be hospitable towards. And we also need to be prepared to welcome those we find hard, possibly even our enemies. We need to be hospitable towards them too, through the work of the cross. Don't forget, the hospitality of Jesus on the cross was actually something in the face of human hostility towards God. Jesus turns around human hostility and turns it into hospitality. He washes and he welcomes. So, to be a church is to be a people who practice cross-formed, cross-shaped hospitality. Be welcomed by Jesus through his washing and his welcome. Be welcoming towards others in reliving and reacting and reenacting the Jesus living parable of foot washing in some way or another. And in do so, let us be a church. Let me read you just a verse from the scriptures which says, keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers. For by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it.